Welcome to the Wellness Lab Digest, where we help you to absorb powerful, life-changing insights from top wellness experts with our daily bite-sized wellness podcast summaries. Each episode is packed with distilled, powerful takeaways to boost your health and well-being. To support this podcast, please scroll down on whatever app you're listening. Ratings and reviews are helpful. Even better, just send the show to a friend. Check out our sponsors at the bottom of the page, or simply click the Support the Show link below the episode description. On to part 3 of our 3-part series on how to build strength, endurance, and flexibility at any age. Here's something that might surprise you. Studies show that by age 70, the average person has lost 50% of their flexibility compared to their 20s. But what if I told you that age isn't actually the main culprit behind this decline?
That's such a striking statistic. I imagine most people just accept that loss of flexibility as an inevitable part of aging.
Well, that's exactly what makes the latest research so fascinating. Scientists have discovered that it's not just about getting older, it's about how we're using or not using our bodies throughout our lives. Let me explain why this matters so much.
So you're saying we have more control over this than we thought?
That's right. And here's what's really interesting. Research shows that people in their 80s who maintain consistent movement patterns often have better flexibility than sedentary 40-year-olds. It's all about understanding what I call the flexibility trinity: strength, neural adaptation, and consistent practice.
You know, that reminds me of something I read about how traditional cultures, where people squat regularly throughout their lives, maintain hip flexibility well into old age.
Exactly right. And that brings up a fascinating point about how our modern lifestyle is actually working against us. You see, our bodies adapt to whatever positions we put them in most frequently. So when we spend 8 to 10 hours a day sitting...
Oh wow, so we're basically training ourselves to be inflexible?
Well, you could say we're literally molding ourselves into that chair shape. But here's the good news. Our bodies maintain the ability to adapt and change at any age. Recent studies from the Journal of Physical Therapy showed that people in their 90s increased their functional flexibility by 40% after just 12 weeks of targeted training.
That's incredible. But what exactly does targeted training mean in this context?
So this is where things get really interesting. The most effective approach combines 3 key elements: strength training through full ranges of motion, neural retraining through breathing techniques, and what researchers call loaded mobility work. Let me break down why each component matters.
I'm particularly curious about this neural retraining piece. It sounds like something completely different from what most people think about when it comes to flexibility.
You know what's fascinating about the neural component? When we feel stiff, about 50% of that sensation is actually coming from our nervous system, not our muscles. Think of it like an overprotective parent. Your nervous system is trying to keep you safe by limiting your movement.
That explains why sometimes we wake up feeling more flexible than others, even though our muscles haven't physically changed overnight.
Precisely, and here's where the breathing techniques come in. Deep, controlled breathing actually sends signals to your nervous system saying, "Hey, it's safe to move here." Studies show that incorporating specific breathing patterns can increase range of motion by up to 20% in a single session.
So how do we put all this together in a practical way?
Well, let me share what I call the 3-3-3 protocol that's been shown to work particularly well. It starts with 3 minutes of mobility work, followed by 3 strength exercises through full range of motion, and ends with 3 flexibility-focused movements. The key is the sequence.
That sounds manageable. But what about people who might be starting from a very limited range of motion?
Here's the beautiful thing about this approach. It's entirely scalable. Let me give you a real-world example. I worked with someone who couldn't touch their knees, let alone their toes. Within 8 weeks of following this protocol, they were able to reach their ankles. The secret? Progressive loading and consistent practice.
That kind of progress must do wonders for people's confidence too.
You're absolutely right about that. And here's something really fascinating. Studies show that improvements in physical flexibility often lead to what researchers call psychological flexibility. Basically, people become more adaptable in their thinking and more resilient to stress.
That's such an unexpected benefit. It really shows how everything in our bodies is connected.
And speaking of connections, let me share something that might blow your mind. Research from Harvard showed that regular flexibility training can actually improve cardiovascular health. It turns out that the fascia, our body's connective tissue, plays a crucial role in blood flow and inflammation levels.
Well, that certainly challenges the traditional view of flexibility training as just about touching your toes.
It really does. And before we wrap up, let me leave our listeners with 3 key takeaways that research has proven to be most effective. First, consistency over intensity. 10 minutes daily beats an hour once a week. Second, combine strength and flexibility work. They're 2 sides of the same coin. And finally, remember that progress isn't linear. It's about the long game.
Those are such practical points that anyone can apply, regardless of their current fitness level.
Exactly, and that's really the heart of what we've learned about flexibility and aging. It's never too late to start, and every small step counts. Thank you all for joining us today, and remember, your body's potential for change doesn't have an expiration date. Thank you for listening to the Wellness Lab Digest. If you have received value from the podcast, I have 3 asks of you. 1, share the show with your friends and send them a link to the show. 2, please leave a rating and review in whatever app you're listening. And last but not least, please let me know what topics you would like us to cover in the future. You can contact me by sending me a message using the Send Us a Text link below the episode description.